Ladies and gentlemen, there are a few topics as controversial as cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies have caused graphics card prices to skyrocket. That, combined with shortages of DRAM, have left gamers in the cold. And it's not been an ideal situation, of course, for folks who are mining Ethereum or Bitcoin or any other currency. With GPU prices continuing to go up, and shortages often plaguing the best cards for mining, neither the miners or the gamers have really been in a happy position. However, things are changing. My name's Paul, and in this RedGamer.com video, we're going to be examining some news which has popped up over the past few days, which is causing a lot of miners to be somewhat concerned, and that's putting it mildly. Perhaps the biggest piece of news is that China will be essentially banning Bitcoin exchanges. 3 of the biggest changes will already be stopping trading. This has been confirmed on September the 30th. And these include BTC China Exchange, OKCoin and Huobi, that is Huobi. Accordingly, the conversation with the government is still ongoing, and this is according to Charlie Lee, who is the creator of Litecoin. Also worthy of note is that the BTCC pool for miners will not be stopping running, at least from what we understand. Now, whether trading is going to eventually come back into the fray or not, it's certainly not particularly great for Bitcoin. In fact, earlier this week, this coincides with JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, and he has called, well, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin in particular, a fraud. Essentially, slightly paraphrasing the guy, but he essentially said it's mostly for people who want to conduct illicit activities. And what's been the result of this? Well, Bitcoin has crashed down considerably. The cryptocurrency, according to Business Insider, has plunged about 25%. Now, that's not to say that it's bad. I mean, it's still around 300% up this year alone. But just, you know, over the last few days, we've seen a massive decrease in price. It's lost over $500 about 13%, bringing it currently down to $3,352 for a single coin. Bear in mind, the 52-week high here was about $5,000. So imagine you bought one of these coins, or managed to mine one of these coins a few days ago, and essentially you would have been pretty much buying one at like $5,000, and now it's going to be lower than $3,500. Now, many are predicting that this coin is going to come back, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if China do reinstate this. Obviously, we don't know. They may not. But even if they don't, other reporters are saying that this is just a blip. Bitcoin, Ethereum, which also has taken a hit, as you can imagine, they will eventually regain themselves and, well, back to normality. So, gamers, of course, are probably going to be fairly happy with this news. They're going to say, well, that's great, because what could possibly happen is that we see an influx of cheap GPUs popping up on, you know, the regular websites like eBay, and possibly we're going to get less competition. This is, of course, from the perspective of gamers in, you know, buying a graphics card or other components on stores. So possibly we're going to see prices reduce, right? Well, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes a while. Generally, supply and demand, don't typically rise and fall at the same speed. It's a bit like the price of, say, gasoline. So what generally happens, and obviously there are some exceptions to the rule, is let's say the price of oil goes up. Well, of course, what happens is the price of petrol, gasoline, goes up with it. However, generally it takes longer for the price of petrol to fall in relation to oil than what it does to go up. And I kind of suspect this is going to be the case for graphics cards, because DRAM shortages are basically beating us at the moment on the noggin, and it's just a bit weird. And manufacturing issues, especially with RX Vega, are still semi there. They are getting better, to AMD's credit. However, there is another factor to consider, and this isn't really perhaps going to upset some of you, but it's worthy of note. while this is great in the short term, I actually was okay, semi-okay with the mining situation, because I figured, yes, it's harder to buy a graphics card, and I know I'm probably going to piss some people off. They're already like gritting their teeth to the point where there's like just the gums left. But hear me out. I would have rather this happened and it puts money into the industry, because AMD in particular need it. And in theory, at least, if this craze had continued, it would allow them to just pump out more cards. Well, at least that's how I was kind of hoping the situation would go. And honestly, if you have a situation where these cards are not selling so quick, it's gonna make things a bit weird, because certain companies have already noticed profitability for desktops and DIY components dropping somewhat. Now, obviously, enthusiast parts, for example, let's just be really blunt here. I imagine some of you, if I was to ask you, do you have a GTX 1080 or above, or an RX 56 or above, or something along those lines, I imagine many of you probably would say yes, even if you're not into the cryptocurrency mining craze. But if you were to take a look at the Steam hardware results, that's not really where people are, really spending their money. PC gaming is certainly at a high, and I do think that the Ryzen CPUs have certainly helped sell motherboards. That's unquestionable. And obviously, when Coffee Lake hits store shelves, for people who perhaps just didn't want an AMD CPU or have been waiting to see what Coffee Lake offers compared to AMD, which, to be fair, is a pretty good strategy, particularly if you've already got, let's say, a 4790K, which is clocked, at a decent speed. You might think, well, you know what, I'm not in a particular rush to upgrade my computer. I'm quite happy with the platform I'm on. I'm going to just wait to see what happens with Coffee Lake. If Coffee Lake isn't quite as good as Ryzen 7, I'll just go with, Ryzen 7 or vice versa. Or you know what, with 4790K is still pretty damn good. I'm going to stick with that. Maybe buy a new graphics card if you need it, but I'll probably just wait until next year when PCIe 4 becomes the norm. And honestly, that's also a pretty damn good strategy. My point being, in case you haven't ascertained it by now, the one benefit of mining is it's been a nice cash influx in the industry. Now, I admit that's probably cold comfort for people who are essentially crying into their coffees every morning when they're trying to buy like a simple card like a 570, which is way overpriced now. I mean, do you remember when AMD launched the 470s? I think there was supposed to be like $180 for the 470. The 480 was about $199. I say about because obviously some retailers would add a bit more, a little bit less. That was for the 4GB model, and the 8GB model was $280. So one can make an argument that the 470 wasn't a particularly great deal at the time, because for $20 more you could essentially get a card which was quite considerably faster. And if you want to plonk down the money on the 8GB model, which honestly I'd probably have recommended, for $240 you could get a card that was about between the speed of the 390 / the 390X, and it was a really nice GPU. Unfortunately, prices have gone up considerably. And it's no secret that AMD are in this really rock and a hard place situation. For example, they tell gamers that they were trying to release the Radeon packs to essentially reduce the likelihood that miners were going to snap up Vega. That's great for PR, right? Well, you'd say yeah. But the problem is, almost simultaneously, they release a driver that's optimized for mining. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing AMD, because if I'm a company, I'm not thinking, well, gee, I don't want these guys to buy my card. I want these guys only to buy my card. That's not how this works. When you're a company, and I'm not saying AMD are like struggling 100% financially, they're doing a lot better now. If you were to take a look at their stock / earnings, it's hell of a lot better than what it was a couple of years ago. But they can't exactly be picky who's going to be buying their cards. And Nvidia as well, don't forget, they were also somewhat jumping in on the mining craze. In fact, one of the things that Jensen said, I think it was in the last investors conference, but I'm not 100% on that, is that they expect the whole market to continue to be boisterous because of cryptocurrencies. Switching to Ethereum for a moment, and I'm by no means an expert in this, but I did a quick Googles, because I'm skillful at that, I can Google. Currently, it's around the 231 US dollars, which it sounds kind of crazy, right? 230 bucks. Well, it wasn't too long ago, in fact, just a day or two ago, that we were looking at a price of about 380 US dollars. This is just for a single coin, might I add. However, this is not the first time that it has crashed. In fact, it's gone to sub $200 before. That was back in July when a bit of bad news popped out. So what am I saying with all this? Well, it's a bit of a controversial topic. I'm saying that I don't think that mining is going anywhere because other countries, it could be India that it pops up next, you know, and becomes like really synonymous with mining. It could be, you know, although it's not allowed to be traded in China, and I'm not saying this is gonna happen, I'm just giving some examples. Although it's not allowed to be traded in China, you can still mine in China. So what does that mean? Well, you could, in theory at least, be a Chinese citizen, jump on a plane, go to Japan or whatever country you wanted to, and sell your coin. Because that's essentially what you could do. You could basically transfer your wallet on a USB stick, or however you wanted to do it. Probably some people would lose their coins in transit, that's inevitable, but hey, you could do it. And then Bob's your uncle. So there is that way to do it. So that would certainly impact trading from, you know, casual people, but it certainly wouldn't impact those who have a career in it. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some black market trading because, I mean, obviously, in the end of the day, I'm not saying once again that this is logistically possible. It once again heavily depends on the rules and how, you know, militant the government decides to go. But it could be that at the end of the day, you could simply go down to your local, you know, Bitcoin cafe, if you will, which is of course somewhat under the counter, and sell your coin in that respect for literal currency, and then that person who's bought that coin would then go to a different country and then trade it for the real value. I'm not saying this would happen, I'm just giving a couple of possible examples here. So honestly, I don't think this is going to be the end of Bitcoin. I don't think it's going to be the end of Ethereum. I don't think it's going to be the end of any cryptocurrency. And there are a lot of them. However, there is definitely a shift from the establishment of banks and financial institutes that really obviously do not like cryptocurrencies. I think we can gather why that is, and I don't really want to turn this into a pro or against mining video, because honestly, I'm kind of like between the two. I kind of like the idea of cryptocurrencies, but from the perspective of a gamer, or from the perspective of, you know, someone who wants to buy technology regardless. I mean, let's say you're even wanting to put together a rendering rig or a high-end PC for whatever purpose, it's a bitch, because prices are just crazy. But that's not really the fault of miners. You can say it is, but they're just buying the cards in just large quantities. And it's just been a perfect storm. Unfortunately, this is just the results of that. And I would much prefer that these companies, and by these companies I mean of course AMD, Nvidia, whomever else are involved in the manufacturing of the GPU, whether that's SK Hynix, Micron, whomever, puts the components together, just simply increases their capacity. Unfortunately, because memory has also been eaten up for other usages, this includes, but not certainly limited to, smartphones, whether it's high-performance computing, so of course that's memory going into PCs, servers, and GPUs, of course, are being used for servers now as well. So that's another reason that HBM2 has also been a bit behind. It's going to be a very interesting couple of years, and I think if you were to ask someone 5 years ago, but what is it now, 2017, 15th of September. So if you were to ask someone, let's say 7 years ago, 1st of January 2010, would you have predicted this? I think some people would have said, yeah, I could kind of understand that it would go in this way and we might have these cryptocurrencies if you explained the basic principle, because I don't think many people would have even, you know, got it just by saying there's a cryptocurrency. I think some people would definitely have said, yeah, I can understand how that would be popular. But I think if you were to say that one of these coins is worth like 5,000 bucks, they'd be like, what the hell? Like, I have friends now who are not super into tech. They play a lot of games and whatever, but they don't really get how a coin is worth 5,000 US dollars, or whatever the currency is worth at that particular time. With all of that said, hopefully you have enjoyed the video, or maybe not if you're a miner. With that said, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.